Hi, guys. Welcome to the Biophiliac podcast. I'm Lucia.
My name is Kiho.
Miles.
I'm
And
Kaya.
oh, we are here to talk to you about biophilic design. So, what's biophilic design? It comes from the word biophilia, which means the innate human desire to be close to nature. So, biophilic design is when the ethos of biophilia coalesces with the design process. So, as people who all live and study in New York, we were interested in this topic because there are so many benefits from being exposed to nature that we don't get living in an urban environment. So, as a solution to this, we explored the concept of biophilic design, which is essentially combining elements of nature with the built environment. And that means either literally like bringing in plants to your home, or like fountains, different natural elements like that, or recreating patterns that exist in the natural environment in the form of like architecture, basically, and the use of natural materials such as stone and wood. And it can also refer to kind of the nature of and like the visual impact of a space, in the way that a space has a lot of room to walk around, to look high, look low, open spaces, sheltered spaces. So in all of these ways, biophilia kind of manifests in the built environment. So we're talking about the benefits of nature.
Yeah, so I just feel like every time I'm surrounded by nature, I just feel my cognitive functioning is restored and rejuvenated. And just my physiological responses, such as like lowered stress hormone levels, reduced blood pressure, my heart rate and muscle relaxation is also observed. And my creativity, critical thinking, and problem solving has tremendously improved. So, like as you said, biophilic design includes living plants, natural views, the sound of water flowing, and other sensory stimuli.
Yeah.
To
Move away from just like sensory and like how it makes you feel. I feel like living in the city, like just walking down the sidewalk and like when you walk under trees, like I feel like on a sunny day, I'm always like moving to where the trees are because it's just like cooler, or like in like parks, it's just like all shaded. So it's like it's so much cooler than it is in the sun, especially with the buildings being so close, like insulating each other. I just feel like, especially like just walking down the street, being around trees is such a relief because like you just get like a little bit of shade and it's like the biggest help ever.
Absolutely. Yesterday was pretty warm. It's getting warmer. It's getting close to summer, and me and my roommate were touring an apartment in Queens in Astoria, and it was so much nicer with so many trees around. Like there was more like airflow, it was cooler, it was like more visually like relaxing, and a lot less like suffocating and stuffy, which I think in Manhattan especially, it can really feel like you said, like the buildings kind of insulate, they like trap the heat down. And yeah, I think especially around now, people are really feeling that separation. Definitely.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many examples of nature improving our urban living experience, for sure. Q?
Yeah, I mean, all of us have kind of been living here for the past 2 years, so I'm sure all of us have our, favorite spots maybe that have these elements of biophilia in them. So if you guys would like to share, I'll go first. Actually, I started kind of circling around Central Park once, and I found this one spot. I dropped a pin in it, and that's kind of the spot where I like to go. It's kind of like a concave area, and it's filled with trees. A lot of dogs there, but I feel like that's kind of like one of my safe places in the city where I can just go and just sit there, relax, maybe just
Yeah.
have my thoughts. So you guys have any places like that around the city?
Yeah, so for me in Central Park, I love the Ramble because it feels like the most like that area feels the most natural, and like you can almost pretend that you're not in the city anymore. And they've got like a lot of water flow going. I know there's a lot of really sophisticated like irrigation in Central Park to have like this consistent water system. And there's an area that has like all these big rocks that you can climb, and a waterfall and streams and rocks. And I'm from Washington, so the streams and the rivers and the trees, it feels a lot more like home. And I also live at Stuyvesant Park Residence, so right outside the window I see the tops of some trees from Sty Park. And me and my friends go there a lot. I go there to do work sometimes. And it's really nice to just be in the shade and have people like walking their dogs, people exercising, better wind flow. It's very relaxing. It feels like these little oases in the city.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Do you guys feel yourself maybe associating nature with the feeling of home?
I do, definitely. Definitely. And the urban, like all the synthetic stuff around, it feels like so detached from what I'm used to, with having like plants and trees and water everywhere. Um, yeah, definitely.
So like at home, I have like a plant aloe vera that I just put on a paper plate. I love aloe vera because it's so versatile. Like I cut it up and I put it on my face for acne or like sunburns. I even put it in my smoothies, and you have to water it like every 2 weeks. So it's like super easy to take care. So yeah. What about you, Kaya? What are your favorite indoor plants?
Unfortunately, I don't have any indoor plants because I'm living in a dorm right now. But we used to, man, I don't know what they were called, but we used to have these plants that they're like perfect for indoors. They require very little sunlight and stuff. And they were really nice. I used to have succulents, but they died. I don't know how I managed to kill them, but they didn't make it. I want to get back into having plants around, especially once I get my own apartment, because I think it has a lot more value than you realize until like now I don't have any plants in my house, and I'm like, man, this feels so lifeless and
Yeah.
sterile.
Yeah, Miles, you did some research on the benefits of houseplants. Do you want to tell us about that?
Yeah, sure. So, like the main benefit of houseplants is their ability to absorb toxins from the air, more specifically benzene and formaldehyde, which are two carcinogens. Um, Other than that, they're just really good at being an easy addition to a space, just to give you like the biophilic benefits as well as like aesthetic benefits. I find that they really help make a space look nicer. Um, a list of like just some easy to take care of houseplants would be like a pothos, a snake plant, a peace lily, and those have flowers on them. So that's a benefit if you like that. A spider plant, an aloe vera, or like a Monstera deliciosa. Those are all gonna be super easy, not require a ton of attention, and be rather forgiving if you forget to water them or put them in the shade.
Sure, yeah.
What do you guys, does anyone else have like any favorite houseplants, or how else do you guys incorporate nature and biophilia into your indoor spaces?
I have quite a few plants in my apartment. I find it really, I just love plants, and I feel like I constantly buy them and I'm completely running out of space. But it's just because it brings such a like really wonderful energy to my space. Like, you can just feel that vibe. And they also, having a lot of plants in the space actually cools it down. It has some really good like energy efficient benefits. So I don't actually have to use my AC as much as I normally would. Plants like aloe vera are actually really good for that as well. I would definitely recommend the pothos. It's so easy. It's a vining plant as well, so they're really beautiful. And you can have them hanging, you can have them climbing up your window. But yeah, they're just really lovely. But what about for people who can't, like Kaya, you're in a dorm right now, so it's hard to have plants. How else can people incorporate biophilia in their spaces?
Um, there are these things called terrariums and mosariums, which are like those like indoor like plants things that you don't need to even take care of, which is really good for people who panic if there's a lot of houseplants, and just it's like super cute as well. So yeah.
You can also add like biophilic benefits to your spaces through just like the use of color or fabric with natural patterns and textures, or like artwork of nature or photographs, really any sort of replication of nature that isn't
Yeah.
like so synthetic, like made out of plastic, will give you those benefits.
Yeah, this might be kind of a stretch, but um, I have been playing a lot of Breath of the Wild, the Switch game, and it's like it's got like a lot of like green space because it's like an open world game, and it's the graphics are really beautiful, and I feel like that's the closest that I can get to like nature, like inside. But I do feel like that does have a value, like media, like even if it is a game that is like in tune with like a natural, aesthetics and environments. If like there's not a lot of real plants that you have access to.
Yeah, definitely. Like games and media, I feel like, if you're not in an immediate space where you can go out and maybe explore surroundings near you, maybe surrounding green spaces, I feel like the internet and a lot of other ways to kind of incorporate nature back into your life is a really great way. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
Do you guys feel that there's like an increase in interest in houseplants? Because yesterday I heard the quote, or I don't know if you'd call it a quote or a phrase, but someone said that houseplants are the new pets and pets are the new kids. Um, do you guys feel like you, if you didn't get a, like, do you feel that like a houseplant is the pet in your life?
It's funny you say that because I am too busy to get a cat because I know I wouldn't give it the attention that it needs. So I always joke about my houseplants being my pets. Um, but yeah, I think that for people who are like me, not at home a lot, just because of work or school, they can be really great. But I definitely think that, especially after COVID, when everyone was locked in, like that's when we really saw the importance of green space, and just having greenery in your own home. Because not only were people stuck in their home, and it gives like I said, my houseplants give such a lively vibe to my space. And it's also healing. But I think green spaces in New York City were one of the only places people could feel like they weren't at like maybe at risk as much as being on the streets. And so I think that we really saw the importance of that. So it makes sense that people are starting to get more plants and to incorporate that into our homes, because I feel like as a society we've kind of understood a little more that just like the value of those things.
Yeah,
there's
I think
definitely. Oh, go ahead.
sorry. Something really interesting that I was thinking of, like with COVID and trends related to indoor plants. I know that there was a lot of it was very trendy, and it still kind of is to have plant decorations like vines around. I saw a lot of that on TikTok. And like incorporating even, I mean, they are plastic, but like it was that was a trend that was going around, and like people like getting succulents and terrariums and making them themselves, or making like these self-contained jars that are like their own ecosystems that aren't they aren't intended to like be opened. They just sit and have their own little like cycle. I think that those trends were really cool to see, and to see people like when they were stuck indoors because of the pandemic, like still trying to connect with nature. And it kind of reflects on like our innate like magnetism to the natural world and organic things.
Definitely, yeah. And for maybe the individuals who are kind of scared to maybe start the process of trying to take care of plants, because it is kind of a responsibility, you know, you do have to look after them, you do have to maybe water them eventually. But for me, my first plant was a Dieffenbachia, also known as the dumb cane. And I was really scared, but as time went on, it kind of became routine to me, and I kind of found a bit of solace and comfort within that. Kind of the process is just taking care of something and maybe having that rely on you. And it was really simple because it was just, you know, you water maybe every few days and you give it indirect sunlight. So not much, doesn't require much, but it still feels like you have some sort of responsibility. And I think that's really important.
It's like a great form of self-care, you know, like having a habit and doing it every day, you just improve your whole overall well-being. So that's amazing.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
Someone told me once that so they have they have a plant that they named after themselves. Yeah, and they continue, so whenever it starts wilting, or I don't know, it's just the active caring for that plant that is named after themselves reminds them to also take care of themselves in just their day-to-day routine. Like when you water the plant, you're also thinking about, oh, what can I do like that would, quote unquote, water me? Like, what do I need? Do I need exercise, water, like literally food? And I think that was just a really interesting thought experiment. I don't know that I like, maybe I'll try it. I don't know if I'm like getting depressed. I don't know. Like it could definitely help, but I think that's an interesting thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely.
I saw something about more about like broad scale cities, but how green spaces contribute to like gentrification in cities. Does anybody know about that?
Yeah. So we talk about all these benefits of green space. But because of redlining, minority communities often experience, so we all know about the heat island effect, right? New York City is really hot. The energy that it produces makes it even hotter, and creates this heat island. But minority communities, because there hasn't been as much investment into green space, they're experiencing worse heat than wealthier, whiter areas. So the people who are most in need of green space, unfortunately, experience something called the green space paradox, which is basically, those who have historically not had access to green space are the most likely to be displaced when new green spaces are created. New green spaces can often raise property values and rent, causing major gentrification, and displacing minority communities. And so this is definitely an issue. I think it's important to discuss all of the different aspects of incorporating biophilic design in urban planning and in our own lives. And this is just one of the potential side effects, unfortunately. But there has been a lot of research into strategies to avoid this, which includes connective infrastructure, outreach and community engagement, intentional site selection, which all kind of have to do with the projects being rooted within the communities that they serve, as well as interdisciplinary collaboration, which means like project managers working with affordable housing developers or local community groups, things like that. Urban planners, it's really important that data collection and evaluation to determine the effects on housing stability happens consistently over time to understand the effects of the green space integration into these areas. And the integration of displacement avoidance strategy needs to be put into law on a city, county, and state level. So I think that, I don't know, I'm curious what you guys think about this. I know that we all probably are not affected by these policies as people who moved into the city, and are part of the gentrification problem, honestly. But I think it's even more so because of that, it's really important to talk about.
I saw
Yeah, I no,
Go
go
ahead.
on.
Well, I saw something similar. All of like the public gardens that we were talking about earlier in the East Village are owned by the city, and it's more of like a temporary placeholder. So if any day like the city could come in and say we want to put an apartment building here, and the garden just has to pack up and leave, and the city can just put an apartment there. There's no like protection over the parks. There's no like
Wow.
owning. It's just like borrowed land from the city where they assign someone to take care of it and make it a garden until they're ready to put an apartment on top of it. So I think that's really interesting because I feel like we have there's already so few of them that none of them are actually like zoned as parks. I think that's really interesting.
That's really unfortunate. I actually had no idea. Before we were recording, I was talking about the small community gardens in East Village and how that's one of my favorite places to go just for some nature. But yeah, I had no idea.
Yeah, I think I really appreciate how you brought up like a more critical like viewpoint um on like creating more green space and how that can contribute to gentrification, because like at the end of the day we are discussing this like as a design practice, like as a speculation, be that like design in your own home of incorporating wider spaces and more greenery, or design like within the city and the impacts that that creates. Like if this is something that we're taking seriously as a genuine solution to the ways that, you know, people of New York City are deprived of the benefits of nature, like cooling and cleaner air, we do need to think and consider how that could negatively affect people, or how that could cause more inequality and more of a problem with accessibility of green space. And how, yeah, like the parks don't, or the gardens aren't, they're not permanent and they're not really protected, and it's that they should be. And that like this kind of discussion, like the whole point is to think about how can we protect these spaces, how can we effectively like implement more green space to benefit everyone. And yeah, there's a lot of things that we need to consider with that. So I think a critical lens on it is very important and will help us find a better solution.
In regards to like community collaboration, back home in California, I actually volunteered for over 3 years at a place called Shade Tree Nursery. So it was basically a giant nonprofit nursery that kind of housed plants, and then we distributed them to schools and, you know, areas that might need natural decoration, and everything was done like free. It was unpaid and everything. But it was just really nice just being able to just be in that space and interact with plants. And I feel like that's a really good way to try to implement that thought process here. So maybe reaching out to community gardens. I know they have a whole bunch over in East Village, near the ABC city, ABC, that area. And
Yeah.
it's nice, you know, you get to bond with the people that are involved with that actual community garden. You get to be hands-on. You get to learn what it's like to be a gardener or gardening in the city, and basically learn about how this is affecting some people. And I really think that's something that people should do more, maybe just reaching out and exploring.
Yeah.
Right. And like, sorry.
Oh, oh, go ahead.
No, you can go, you can go.
I was just gonna say, like, these spaces create a sense of community, and that's a huge, factor of green space and biophilic design. Is it not only benefits us as individuals, but it allows for a space for us to come together in different ways, like in the gardens, I know that there are so many programs where people will teach you about botany and growing your own food and growing your own herbs. And people are always excited to like talk about what they're doing in their garden with you if you visit. And it's just a nice place to hang out with friends as well, just baseline. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, so I think that it's a really important investment into not only cooling down an area, but investing in just like the health of a community as well.
Right. I think investing is a great way to put it. Like if the more people get into botany in their own personal lives, the more that they can compost and instead of throwing away all their food waste, they could use that to create more green space, even just for themselves. And the more that they engage with these communities, the more like support these community gardens have, and the closer that those community gardens have to like be able to protect and keep that space. If there's a lot of support for these community spaces, if the city decides, hey, we want to put some H&M apartment complex there, then there'll be some kind of community response, hopefully.
There was like this study by Roger S. Ulrich, and he said that patients with views of nature had shorter post-operative hospital stays and required like fewer medication and had fewer complications than those with brick wall views. So that was really interesting to see how like even artificial lighting can like increase stress and cause like sick building syndrome. So yeah.
Yeah, I recently was, looking up what some of the biggest health problems in New York City are, and one of the biggest is blood pressure. That people are super stressed. It's like mentally it's tough to be in such a busy place without any like respite from that, day to day, and you're always surrounded by concrete and buildings, and it makes a lot of sense that medically it's people require less pain medication if they have nature around them. And I think that's definitely a testament to how much people in New York City would benefit from more greenery, like even just in their own homes. Definitely.
Yeah, Kehoe, do you want to talk about some of the research you did about the effects of living in an urban environment on your health?
Yeah, so I mean, aside from all the positive impacts that biophilia may bring, there are some negative health impacts associated with maybe not experiencing that nature in your life. So basically, like seclusion from nature in the natural world can lead to a lot of like lower mental fortitude and psychological distress. It can lead to maybe symptoms of nervousness and maybe even depression. Definitely with interruptions in sleep patterns, and all of that kind of indirectly leads to a lot of diseases like kidney disease, heart disease, high blood pressure, and obesity and weight gain. And there's actually a really interesting study done by the International Journal of Environmental Research and Public Health, and they were basically doing a study that kind of showed childhood nature exposure and how that affects developmental psychology within children and social skills. And they actually found out that inhibiting children from nature kind of deprives them of opportunities for social engagement and physical activities. So I thought that was really interesting. So did you guys ever, you guys experienced a lot of nature growing up, right? In a physical setting?
I definitely did.
Yeah, probably more
Do
than
you think
you would
it
have.
affected how you grew up?
I definitely think that it was a huge positive influence on me. That like, for summer camp, like we'd go out into the woods and go hiking, and there's a lot of like physical exercise and a lot of we would do like a ton of activities in the woods where you'd learn about stuff and around nature. And I think that also just being around that environment really helped to like preserve that information, if that makes sense, because it was such a positive experience that I think that I was able to learn more and remember those things more, and like the more positively that I associate that kind of learning process, I think that was generally just really good for my development.
I
100%.
I grew up in like Bangkok, Thailand. So like I would always go to the beach, like sip my coconut water and make sand castles. And it was just like very therapeutic and just a humbling experience, you know.
Yeah. And I
Um,
think what's really interesting is kind of as we grow up, we tend to kind of look back at our past and kind of take for granted what we experienced as children. And I think a lot of that ties in with the nature and the physical activity, everything we kind of experience as kids that maybe we don't get as much of now. So maybe we think that back then it was a simpler time, a happy time, maybe,
Exactly.
you know?
Yeah,
Like I
definitely.
always like can't wait to like go back home because like the city is too much for me here. Like it's a huge culture shock. And also like all the buildings just like stress me out like a lot. So like I'm so excited to go back in like 2 weeks.
Yeah. The first time I like left the city was I had been here for like 2 months and I hadn't even like I think I took the Staten Island ferry once and then I just got right back on and came back to Manhattan. Like I had not left the island of Manhattan for like 2 months. And I was just driving through Pennsylvania. And no offense to Pennsylvania, but like again, I'm from Washington, so it's kind of underwhelming the nature of Pennsylvania. Um, but I almost cried just like seeing the just like seeing trees and mountains and open space. Like I was like thinking back to everything that I took for granted with like having just trees around and being able to like see the horizon.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think like whenever I go in for Thanksgiving, I think about like just the way that the air smells different and the fact you can like actually see further than like 100 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
I just think it's like such a shock. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I'm from Wyoming, so it's literally night and day difference. And like even like the stars, I miss the stars. Um, and yeah, I mean there it's like you are quite literally one with nature because there's not much else. But yeah, so I think we can all like relate that moving to New York is a big culture shift and a big shock, and we all kind of experience the effects of that difference of like wow I feel like I took nature for granted a lot, and I feel like I took the effects of it for granted, and I see how I kind of lack that here. So it was good to talk about the different ways that we kind of overcome that. So I'm curious to all who are listening, your thoughts on this and your experiences just moving to New York, if you lived in New York your whole life, how that has been, kind of what nature means to you. I'm interested to hear your thoughts. So tweet us at Biophiliacs, and we would love to hear your opinions, and we'll talk about them in the next podcast.
Thank you for listening.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.